Have you no sense of decency, sir? Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency? Those powerful, historic, and beautiful words put an end to an ugly period in American history. Joseph Welch, a lawyer for the U.S. Army, uttered these momentous words in the now infamous McCarthy Army hearing, in which a bully, a bigot, a very nasty politician met his Waterloo. It was the Battle of the Joes on June 9, 1954, about 12 years before I was born on my birthday. Joe Welch versus Joe McCarthy. Senator McCarthy was leading an ugly crusade against Americans in government, accusing them of being secretly communist. According to most historians, Joe Welch's statement invoking the idea of decency, a virtue that Americans valued so much in an individual, in their society, in the government, in their politics, triggered a series of changes that put an end to this ugliness in American politics. A word was enough to end a trend of ugliness in culture and politics. That was then. But look at our politics today. Did you watch the first presidential debate? I did. I was horrified by the ugliness that pervaded the first presidential debate. The content was cantankerous, disrespectful, divorced from reality and truth. There were very few moments when one would have associated decency with politics. That debate serves as a mirror, a reflection of the ugliness that is now a defining characteristic of our politics and our culture. Are we not a city on the hill? Now everyone in the world can see this ugliness so prominently on display. Remember George Floyd? Those 8 minutes and 47 seconds that it took Derek Chauvin to squash the life out of George Floyd redefined America. The image and the video traumatized many of us. I do not think I will ever be able to forget how a man was killed by those who were supposed to protect him while others watched. That brutal cameo is reflective of our politics. It is a metaphor of how, like George Floyd's life, all goodness is being squeezed out of our society. Derek Chauvin's public execution of Floyd reintroduced America to the world. Last week, Amnesty International had to shut down its operations in India because of government harassment. Through a video commentary, I tried to engage Indian civil society, and I was told by Indians, did you not see what happened to George Floyd? Your society is brutal, merciless, and racist. Stop preaching to us. Yes, indeed, those 8 minutes and 47 seconds have given us a new identity worldwide. By now, hopefully, I have made my point that politics, society, and culture in America is beginning to look rather ugly. Ugly is now the new normal. It is not an aberration anymore. And sadly, it is a global pandemic. I research and teach about politics in the Middle East and South Asia. It's not pretty there either. In India, upper caste Hindus are raping women from vulnerable communities, and the ruling party advocates for the accused. There were riots in New Delhi where police and members of the majority community destroyed life and livelihood of minority communities. In China, the Uyghur community is facing oppression like no community anywhere. The Middle East is at war with itself. Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Libya, states are collapsing and millions are displaced, killed, or are starving. We live on a beautiful planet, but we are living in a very ugly era. I call this condition a global pandemic of ugliness as loss of ihsan. What is ihsan? What have we lost? Ihsan is a spiritual and mystical concept of Islam that means very simply, literally speaking, to do beautiful things. It is the cornerstone of Islamic mysticism, also known as Sufism. The values and practices that inform the beautiful poetry of Rumi that we are also familiar with derive from Ihsan and Sufism. The goal of Islamic mysticism is to do beautiful things and to live a beautiful life. The Quran says, Ahsanu, inna Allaha yuhibbul muhsinin. Ahsanu, inna Allaha yuhibbul muhsinin. The Quran says, do beautiful things, for God loves those who do beautiful things. God's mercy is closer to those who do beautiful things. God is with those who do ihsan. But the most authoritative definition of ihsan comes from a hadith, a tradition of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It is called the Hadith of Jibreel, a tradition of Angel Gabriel. It is the source of some of the most fundamental concepts of Islam. It is also a fascinating seminar, the only one in human history that was taught by a prophet and an angel together. In the Hadith, Angel Gabriel asks several questions to Prophet Muhammad and he answers them. What is Islam? What is Iman? What is Ihsan? And a couple of questions about end of times. When Gabriel asks Muhammad, peace be upon him, what is Ihsan? The Prophet said, Ihsan is to worship Allah. Ihsan is to serve God as if you see Him. But if you cannot see Him, then at least know that He sees you. It means that ihsan is to do things as if you're gazing upon God. You're engaged with the divine. But even if you're not able to see God, you should at least be conscious and aware of the fact that God sees you, that God's gaze is upon you. So I understand ihsan as you gazing upon God and God gazing upon you. It is to live life as if you have made eye contact with God. Muhammad also said that God has commanded ihsan in everything. So I ask in my research, why not in politics? So how can we bring beauty, ihsan, back into our politics here in America, in our culture and in our society? Before we try to solve our problems, we really need to understand what are they, and there are many. So I submit to you that two of our biggest problems are, number one, racism, and number two, inequity. People of color and people who see no rise in their income, whose jobs are insecure, who have to work more and more for less and less, whose healthcare is not guaranteed, are the most vulnerable people in our society. There is systemic discrimination against people of color, especially African Americans. The fact that the richest and the most powerful country in the world cannot protect the lives of its vulnerable citizens is what gives us our ugliest hue. Ihsan is a conglomeration of values. In my research on ihsan, I found that ihsan is a composition of many virtues such as love, compassion, forgiveness, mercy, charity, and many more virtues that render human conduct beautiful. The two virtues are critical, and I want to highlight them today. And I believe that if these values are nurtured, they can help us fight racism as well as inequity. They are called murahaba and fana. Murahaba is vigilance against the self, and fana is self-annihilation. Murahaba is a spiritual practice that demands vigilance against the self. At the end of the day, you ask yourself questions about how you lived your life that day. It is to consistently and perpetually confront oneself with the question, Are my actions leading to beautiful outcomes? Am I making this world better and more beautiful, or am I part of the problem? Not only should we ask these self-critical questions at the individual level, but also at the societal level. Are our institutions, our leaders, adding to the ugliness that surrounds us, or are they in pursuit of ihsan? This exercise of self-reflection, of self-criticism, of holding yourself to a higher standard, demanding more beauty, more virtue, more responsibility from your own actions and from those of your institutions is what muraqabah is all about. While muraqabah is an Islamic spiritual concept, many of you may not be very familiar with it. It is similar to the Socratic ideal that an unexamined life is not worth living. That is what moral beings do. They judge themselves according to a moral standard. And that's what Socrates meant, to examine your life, to judge its moral worth. Fana is an unbelievable idea. It comes from the Quranic verse, Kullu man alayha fan. It says that everything that exists will perish, except the face of your Lord, which is majestic and noble. Prophet Muhammad also teaches us in the context of this verse that fana is to die before we die. What does it mean to die before we die? What does it mean that everything except the face of God is perishable? What it means is to gradually efface ourselves. Virtue is to gradually efface ourselves. The goal of Sufism, the goal of trying to achieve ihsan, the goal of becoming beautiful is through self-effacement. We erase ourselves and self-interest in pursuit of the welfare and good of others. To move away from self-regarding to other-regarding politics. Can we spend some of our time, our resources, our efforts to make the lives of others better? This is how we can bring beauty into our lives and our culture and our society. By recognizing that there is no virtue in selfishness, but only in selflessness. We do not have to completely become martyrs. All we need to do is think a little less of the self, a little more of the other. Ihsan is to give a little more and take a little less. That is how you live life, as if you have made eye contact with God. Give a little more, take a little less.